So today I just wanted to show you a couple of simple modifications I've made to my lathe. It's basically a carriage stop, and it's simply a piece of mild steel, a couple of holes drilled in there, and then just a piece of threaded stainless steel M8 bar with a couple of knurled sort of thumb screws, one at the front, one at the back, and obviously that can be adjusted. A little brass, a little stop end there. And what I did was I drilled and tapped this flat part of the lathe, which is like a continuation from the main bed, which obviously supports the headstock. And I drilled and tapped two M5 threads in there, and that simply bolts on there. And as you can see, it then acts as a stop, which you can obviously adjust by using these screws, and it just comes up against the carriage. And well, that was the first mod I did, and I never really liked having to tap holes in this. I don't like to sort of deface the lathe, but then I wanted to build a indexing system, and it meant me drilling more holes in it, and I thought, you know, this possibly not the best way to go about this is to keep putting holes in the lathe. So I came up with just a very simple metal bar, really, which just becomes a sacrificial metal bar. So that basically will clamp onto there, and then I can drill as many holes in this as I like, or, you know, if I change my mind or change something in the future, I can swap this bar out, drill the same two holes, and then of course I don't have to put any more holes into the lathe. So this is just a piece of 5/8 by 5/8. I think it's 5/8. Yeah, 5/8. And I utilised one of the holes which I'd already drilled and tapped originally. Made the second hole there. It's this one's 7 inches long, and it fits just in between, so that the actual activation lever there for the back gear it doesn't interfere with. But if you wanted to make one that was longer, you could just put a little notch out there. I know some of you use the indexing back plate, which has obviously got the index holes in, and you could actually utilise that then as the supporting bracket for your indexing pin. I decided to index from the back, and so all it does simply, it's a couple of M5 counterbore screws, so counterbore the hole so that the screw sits nice and flush, and that just screws on there. Let me get the other screw. Like I say, this is a piece of 5/8 bar, but the actual thickness of the steel, which is the headstock support, is 1/2 inch. So you could use 1/2 inch. I just used 5/8 because that was what I sort of had knocking around in the scrap box, and I just sort of square it up underneath, so it's square up flush with the underside. Just squeeze that down a fraction. That's better. And then of course, once that's mounted on there, it can stay on there really. Obviously you need to take it off to drill and tap your new holes and that. Then the original carriage stop that I made will now just screw back onto there. So again, this time I opened it up to M6 screws this time. Not that it makes any difference what size screws you use, but yeah, like I say, that's just a piece of mild steel. And if I just well, you can see, so I can just set that, so you know, whenever I'm working, if I bring into the stop point I want to be at, you know, I can then adjust that in or out by whatever amount I need, and that just makes a nice stop. And when it's not in use, it simply winds out the way, The length of this bar I've actually got on at the minute is, well, it's 10 inches long. And I also drilled a small hole in the cover here, which, so as you can see, it'll slip through there, so it comes out of the way, right out of the way of the lathe. Obviously not so far that it will interfere with any of the change gears at the back there, but you can simply just lock that off, so you know it's not going to go anywhere. So there you go, a nice simple carriage stop. And like I say, the other thing I wanted to build for it was a simple indexing system. So I sort of build model steam engines, so often, you know, the cylinder head covers and things like that, they need a sort of bolt hole circle drilling. And so what I've built is this spindle with a 60 tooth Myford wheel on there, and that's it works in the same fashion. Actually, it's an expanding mandrel, so this part here is turned down obviously to suit the internal diameter of your spindle hole, and then there's a tapered like little plug at the end, so there's a bit of a taper on that, and obviously a threaded bar which goes through. And I also made on this one a little slot for a keyway, a little keyway in there, so obviously that stops that rotating, so that just fits on there. The threaded bar, the pigeons are back out. The threaded bar just goes through, screws into there's a slot there if you see. So obviously as that gets pulled in, when you tighten this up, the taper expands that piece of metal there in the slot, and it sort of locks itself inside the spindle. So as you can see, you tighten that up, you use a spanner obviously, and then so obviously I needed something to be able to index that with, and well, this is what I came up with. It's originally I built this little plunger system, and it was originally going to sit on top here and index off the ball wheel, but I then realised that the ball wheel only had 65 tooth ball wheel. For some reason I thought it was 64. I sat and counted them all and I came up with 64, which meant that was sort of divisible, but actually when I tried to use it I realised it was 65, and that really only gives me well, a bolt hole circle of 5 or 13, so it wasn't particularly useful. Obviously a 60 tooth gear gives you a lot more options. You can obviously do, well, 60 hole, you can do a 30 hole, 15 hole, 12, 10, 6, 5, 4, 3 and obviously 2 bolt hole circles, or 2 index divisions. So I sort of purposed the spring loaded plunger there. It's basically just a turned piece with a spring inside, so it pulls back and pulls itself in, and then there's just a slot sort of cut on the end there, or shaped, so it fits the teeth of your indexing gear. And it was just cobbled together out of a few bits of steel I had knocking around. It's got a little cut out there, so it just sits over the top, but as you can see it sits there. Let's get that in. I've got another screw somewhere. It's in there, of course it is. So you just align that up. Obviously that's to tighten it up, it puts the pressure on there. I've not tightened that up yet, so. What I'm really trying to show you here is this sacrificial bar, which allows you to do other things, mount other stuff. There might be other purposes for this yet, still don't know, but you can always drill and tap this wherever you want, or change it for a different size thing, or for whatever you're doing. It's just a useful little piece to have built for your lathe. And then all I'd do is I'd tighten up the mandrel, and then of course you can index onto the gear, and that's sort of sorted. As you can see, I've put well, they're marked at the moment in 10 tooth divisions, so that obviously that gives me 6 for a 6-hole bolt circle that I was doing on a brass engine cover the other day. And you simply pull the plunger out, rotate it round to your next position, drop it back in, drill your next hole, blah blah blah, rinse and repeat. So there you go, a couple of mods I've done to my Myford ML7 lathe.